Hi there. I want to show you how you can create time-limited trial licenses in Cryptolens. So the way to do it would depend on the number of customers that you need to issue those trial licenses to. If it's just a very few set of customers, the easiest way would be through the dashboard. So the same way that you would generate a general license key, you'd go to the product, click on the Create New Key button, and then select the trial feature and then the time-limited feature. And hit Create. And then we've generated our license key here, which is a trial license. Another approach would be through the API. So for example, you could have a form on your website that calls this method depending on, for example, if the customer has provided an email address as an example, you could then see, oh, do they exist in the database? Then if they do not, then you send a request to our API method and then return them a license key. Of course, this approach also has its drawbacks in the sense that they could supply a different email or generate a temporary email address. So there are a few things to keep in mind if you would like to use that approach. And the third way is the one I'm going to focus on today, and that is the verified trial feature. And the way it works is that on the client side, so in your application, you would call a specific API method. In this case, it's the create trial key method, and then also supply the machine code or any other device identifier. And Cryptolens would see, and if it sees that this machine code has not been issued a trial before, it would generate a license key and send it to your application. And then, of course, if it has seen it, then it will not do that. So let's focus on that. So the way it works, if we just start with this article, I'll explain where we have all the defaults and then how you can change things depending on your particular use case. So we can just copy the first few lines here. Actually, we can just copy the first line here, which I've already done in a sample product here. So for this to work, you need the access token, the product ID, and then the machine code. So let's go back to the access token page. We need to select create trial key. Permission needs to be selected. Let's call this test. And then let's create a new access token. And then go back to the product. So, and then the product ID, I believe, should already be the same as this one. That's correct, 4097. Then the last piece to get this to work is to supply the machine code. So normally you would call a method such as helpers.getMachineCode. However, since I've already activated that before and I would like to show you how it would work in your product, I'll just set this to test2. So this is not the way it's supposed to be done. You're supposed to generate the identifier that is specific to that particular customer, to their machine. But this is just for this example. So let's see how this works. If we build the product or the application, and let's see. So if everything works, we should see the license key popping up here. Good. So once you've issued this trial license, you can then proceed as normal with activation. So you would call key.activate and then proceed as usual. So let's go back to the dashboard and refresh the product page. And you can see that it has issued a license key, which has the period set to 15, so it will expire in 15 days. And then the trial feature and time limit features are set to true. So if you would like to change this, for example, let's say you want to use feature 4 as trial and then feature 7, for example, as the time limited feature, you could do that by clicking on edit feature names. And then you can change so you could, for example, set this to default. And then what did we say? We could say, let's say feature 4 is the trial feature. And then let's say feature 7 is the time limited feature. So in that case, whenever you call create trial key method, it will set those two to true. However, there's one exception. If you have selected treat all licenses as time limited, then it will not set the time limited feature. It will only set the trial feature to be true. So this is the basic way of setting this up. Now let's talk about the config, or different ways you can customize this. And one question that could arise is how would you change how would you customize the the expiry date. So in this case, we set it to 15. So in 50 days, that license will expire. So the way to do it, as it's covered in the article, is by working with the access token. So the access token, if we go back to this page, and we can click on, you can remove this old one and create a new access token. Test 2, we click on select create trial key box. So we need to have that permission. And then we can use the feature log here. So it's a separate field. And then set the expiry date. So in how many days should the license expire? So default was 15. So let's suppose that you'd like it to work in a month or for a month. So that would be 30 days. Let's see if we've done everything correctly. Create trial keys checked. Good. Let's see if the access token is here. That's good. So let's go back to our product. And then change this access token. I think I didn't copy it correctly. Let's copy it again. Now we have the access token. And then you can click debug this again. Probably, oh right, we forgot to change the. Let's change the machine. Let's suppose this is a different machine, test 5. Forgot to change that. Good. Now we have a new trial license. Go back to the product. Let's refresh. So now we have a new license, and the period is set to 30. And since we didn't change any of the defaults, it's still the feature 2 and feature 3 that are set to true. So this was a short tutorial on how to set up trial keys, and particularly how you can issue trial licenses automatically through your application. I would suggest reading this article for more details. And as we mentioned earlier, it's important that you pick, you don't hard code the machine code, but you actually pick, use a method that we provide or a different way that you prefer to use to identify that particular end user or device. Thank you so much for watching, and please let us know if you have any questions.